Chapter 2. Khalil. Khalil had spent 2 years with Eric, Tony, and Barb. During this time, his language had picked up, his strength had increased, and he had gained some semblance of control over the fire within. Every time he thought about leaving the group to find his parents, the fire he held inside began to sputter uncontrollably. Eric had called in anxiety. For some reason, when Eric had told him this, a thin trail of lava ran from his eyes. Now, they were on a field trip to the nearby farms. Soon, more eggs would be hatching. Khalil rode on his horse, behind Eric and in front of Tony and Barb. He had named his horse Tracy. She had an ash-gray coat with a fire mane and bright yellow teeth. The faster she ran, the more her obsidian hooves glowed brighter. The faster she ran, the more her trail blazed with fire. The other steeds had ash-gray coats similar to Tracy's. The main difference was how dark or light they were. Barb's horse had green teeth, while Tony's had indigo. Eric's horse had violet teeth and a mane of violet flames to match. His was the fastest of the horses, and she had an eagle to match. Many times Eric had to fight with her to stop her from leaving the others behind. They had been traveling for a day now, and there was half a day of traveling left. Khalil heard a screech from above, and Eric stopped traveling. What was that? Why does Eric seem concerned? Eric turned to them. There is a Muspelheim dragon nearby. We must travel slowly, or it will notice us. I haven't seen a dragon yet. I want to see one. Eric reached into a stone backpack and retrieved a few items. He passed them out. I didn't want to give these out yet. You're all still developing your natural abilities. This dragon wasn't here on my last visit, though. We cannot afford to be unarmed should we be caught. Use these to defend yourself if necessary. Khalil looked at the weapon in his hand. His fire within began to sputter. This time, it was not anxiety. In his hands were two wooden circles, spikes lining its circumference. Tony had received a staff made of the same wood, a hollow obsidian gem resting at the top. Barb had received a shield with obsidian spikes outlining the edge, also made from wood. The wood that made up their weapons were ash gray. She gave it a disappointed look. Eric raised an eyebrow. You don't like your gift? I do, but I want to fight, not defend. Without a strong defender on our team, we could be in serious trouble. It is your goal to see who needs the most support and to get to them as quickly as possible. Also, there is this. Eric pulled on two spikes that were opposite from each other on the shield. They became short daggers with obsidian blades. I have seen all your temperaments, and you are a sweetheart, Barb. You wish to help, I know, and that is why you are the defender. You care about us enough to always have our backs. I will not leave you without the ability to defend yourself as well. Only use these when you must. She gave a solemn nod. Eric turned to Tony. You have exceptional control over your magma. The other day, I saw sparks emitting from your fingers. Was that on purpose? Tony grinned. I thought so. Well done. Focus on that feeling. Push it into your staff if you can. If you can't, stay close to Barb should we have to fight. Finally, Eric turned to Khalil. These are chakrams carved from a special tree found in Muspelheim. All the weapons are. Your control over your magma is decent, but it could use refining. Oh, to refine means to make better, usually in small ways that add up to improve the overall skill. You excel in the amount of magma you have access to. You will be our striker. In that way, you're like me. Eric drew a sword that had a red glass handle and a clear crystal blade. In the middle of the hilt, magma swirled in a vortex. Khalil could feel the heat emanating from the sword. It felt similar to the heat that emanated from Eric. Khalil had the urge to hold the sword. I'm like him? A striker? That's awesome. I hope we get to fight soon. The trees in Muspelheim are extra resistant to fire. Given enough time, they will repair themselves. This is because the wood never stops living, even when cut. Well, if you were to let it come into contact with water, that would do the trick. Shouldn't be a problem for us, though. Think of this as your beginner weapon. If you master them, I will help you obtain a better one. Let us pray we can practice before we need to fight. Now, we must get food or the young ones will be hungry. Eric urged his steed to walk in the direction they had been traveling in. It will probably take us a full day since we cannot use our full speed. A Muspelheim dragon is primal and attacks most things on sight. They are faster than our horses since they can fly. The group followed close behind. Half a day of walking went by before they heard another shriek. It was much closer this time. Before they had time to react, a shadow passed overhead, flames enveloping the group. Khalil felt his energy increase. He looked around and saw Eric had his sword out, the hilt glowing brightly. Khalil retrieved his chakrams from his stone backpack. He told Tony to try pushing his fire into his staff. Am I supposed to do the same? Eric jumped off his steed and surveyed the area. No signs of the dragon. Muspelheim dragons are resistant to fire like us. Unlike us, however, their resistance only applies to their scales. You must cut through them before your fire will have any effect. It knows we are here. It must have a nest somewhere. I've never come across it before. It must be searching for something. The shadow passed over them again. This time, Barb raised her shield over Tony as he stared at his staff. Her shield caught on fire, blue flames eating at the wood. Well done, Barb. You are on point. The dragon landed in front of them and shrieked a shriek that rattled Khalil to his core. That's... Eric shoved him to the ground as the dragon's tail soared overhead. Khalil had managed to get a good look at it before he became intimate with the ground. A 15-foot tall beast with a wingspan of 20. It had ruby red skin with a deep blue underbelly. Khalil had not seen the color blue often. It was mesmerizing. The dragon had 4 polished black canine teeth that did not fit in its mouth. That's so pretty. Eric had run at the dragon after shoving Khalil to the ground. He jumped over the tail as it swung low. He stabbed his sword down into the tail, and the hilt of his sword flashed violet. With a flick of his wrist, he severed the tip of the tail from the rest of the dragon. Another shriek. Khalil brought himself to his feet. I want to fight. Barb jumped in front of him as a blast of violet fire came their way. The violet fire hit her shield and was dispersed into the spikes. A third of her spikes glowed blue, 2/3 glowed violet. She stared at her shield and grinned. Awesome. She pulled 2 blue spikes from her shield and whipped it at the dragon. She missed by a wide margin. The 2 spike daggers hit the ground and exploded into flames. A red fireball came from Tony's direction and hit the dragon. It did no damage, but Tony still stood tall, a grin on his face. I want to fight. Why do I keep getting blocked? Khalil focused on the fire within. He could feel it traveling through his body, each breath adding another wave of fire to wash over him. He imagined the waves extending into his chakrams. They began to feel warm in his hands. Then, they burst into green flames. Yes, I did it even faster than Tony. He ran at the dragon and heard Eric's voice from the other side of the dragon. Throw them! Don't get close! Eric was hit by the dragon's right claw. His right arm shattered into pieces. Khalil stared at him in alarm as Barb ran to defend him. Khalil threw the right chakram as if it were a frisbee. The rotating disc cut the dragon's cheek. It turned its attention to Khalil. Oh no, I don't have Barb. A yellow fireball came from Tony's direction and hit the dragon where the chakram had just sliced. This time, the dragon took damage. It looked from Tony to Khalil to Barb and Eric. It shrieked and began to flap its wings. Khalil's right chakram came back and embedded itself in the dirt next to his feet. Khalil threw his left chakram at the beast and hit its left wing. This time, he had the dragon's full attention. Blood leaked from the cut he had created. It tilted its head and opened its mouth wide as if it was going to snap at him. Khalil prepared to throw his right chakram when suddenly an indigo fireball escaped Tony's staff. Tony collapsed on the ground as the fireball aimed true. The dragon swallowed the fireball and its eyes widened. It rose into the air and began to fly away unsteadily. Khalil hopped on Tracy and began to give chase. Eric's voice came from his and Barb's direction. Let it flee. It knows there are too many of us to focus on. Khalil did not listen. It's weekend. I will finish it off. Or should we fight it on the way back as well? He heard the sound of another horse behind him. It was Barb, holding her shield. We can do this. Khalil grunted in appreciation. They followed the dragon, Eric's voice becoming more distant.